Hi, I'm Rowan from HG Walter, and today I'm going to show you how to butcher a loin of pork. Coming underneath the blade bone, face up the ends, grate the tip of the knife against the bone.
3, 2, 1.
So here we have our loin of pork, and the first cut I'm going to do is a French trim rack, and then show you some T-bone chops. So the first thing I'm going to do is just to remove the flare fat from the inside. We'll keep that, render it down for lard. Next, I'm going to separate the rack from the rest of the loin, and we're going to focus on that first. So the rack generally is 10 ribs long, so just at the end of the bottom rib, I'm going to cut straight down. Then with my saw, just separate it. This is the T-bone. I'm going to put that to one side for now, and we'll look at that later. When French trimming a rack, there's two things you need to do. Take the chine bone off at the bottom and French trim the bones at the top. I like to start with the bones at the top first. For that, I need my boning knife. I'm going to cut a line straight down, about 2 inches on top here. I'll be careful not to cut into the eye of the meat. I'm going to keep it straight, going all the way along, matching the line at the top. Go all the way down until you feel those bones, and you want to go between them if you can. Then lift the meat up. I'm just going to scrape against the rib bones to that previous line I've just cut. So I'm just taking that top cap of meat off now. And as I pull away, it should come away like that. And I'll put that to one side. This will go for sausage meat. Now once I've trimmed the bones back, the first thing I like to do is scrape this membrane from the top. There's a reason for this, which we'll come to later. And what you want to do, with the boning knife, I'm going to scrape down until you get that bone right opened up for you. And this will make your life a lot easier. Now when I've separated that membrane from the top, there's a couple of little tricks I like to do. Firstly, I'm going to just mark my line by going through each bone from the top. Now once I've gone through there, I'm going to turn the loin on its back. And what that has allowed me to do is just give me the line on the inside. Now if you notice, there's a membrane on the inside of the bone as well. So what I want to do, I just want to make sure that membrane's cut along that same line. And what that helps me do, when I move the loin back, is just push this meat down. And because I've scraped that membrane away earlier, that allows me to get it off nice and easily rather than cutting and scraping each individual bone. So if I've done my job right, hopefully most of this meat should pull away together, leaving you with minimal scraping you've got to do on the bones afterwards. Again, none of that's wasted, that's all going to go into sausage meat as well. We're just going to scrape off the last little bits of meat on those bones, working our way down, getting every little piece off. Then once we've done that, we're going to look at taking off the chine bone off the bottom. The chine bone is essentially the spine bone that runs down the bottom. First, we're going to cut down this flat plate, and then we're going to saw these ribs. And what that will let us do is cut nice French trim pork cutlets. I'm just going to sit it on the edge of my board, just gives me a good angle to cut down on the flat part of the chine bone. So with my knife held like a dagger, I'm just going to go, and my knife is scraping against the bone. Loosen as we go. Go from one end all the way to the other. And it just lets you see where you're going as you work down. And then we're going to move it back onto its back, and then I'm just going to saw down these ribs. Got a little bit of tenderloin meat left there. I want to scoop that out, and that will go into the sausage trim as well. Just take that off the top. Now just get my saw. Now the same when we're cutting, breaking down the side, we want to just saw through the bone. We do not want to go into the meat. And I'm aiming just for that corner. I don't want to go too fast, just gentle. And as I go, I'm angling my saw just so I'm hitting the right bones at the right time. The worst thing I can do is cut into the eye of the meat. Just going to gently cut down. Even, sometimes I might pull the bones apart just because I really don't want to get into that eye. And once I know they're split, I'm going to use my boning knife. And what I want to do, I just want to come down into the chine bone and match up where I've been cutting against the back. And eventually, and I'm pulling that bone away, letting the weight of the bone show me where I want to go. Eventually it should just come off. Like that. And the bone isn't wasted either. We sell those to restaurants and they use them for stocks and soups and anything they need. The next thing I want to do, I just want to give it a little face there just to make it look a little bit cleaner. Just with my steak knife, cut all the way along and just square it off. Another bit of fat going for the sausages. So that's our French trim loin of pork. But next I'm going to score it and tie it and cut you some cutlets. Now to score loin of pork you need a good sharp knife. And most butchers and most people's kitchen knives aren't really up for it. So what we like to use is a Stanley knife. Now when you're scoring, a lot of people will talk about doing diamond scores and stuff like that. I do not recommend it. Ideally you want to go straight lines and not too deep. You're just cutting through the top of the skin into the fat. You don't want to slash into the meat. You just want to go all the way along. Probably about a centimetre to half a centimetre thickness. Now by going in a straight line, when you come to tie the joint, what that will do, that will help open up the cuts you've made, which lets the fat come out and render and crisp up that skin nicely. There we go. And next I'm going to tie the joint. Now to tie the joint, I'm going to tie between each bone. And I'm going to go from the thickest point down to the thinnest. Now what I'm going to tie is a butcher's knot, it's a slip knot. And you have your feeding string coming from underneath. Just hold that with my two fingers. Your top string, I'm just going to hook on my bottom fingers and then twist around. Literally all I'm doing. As I do that, I grab the end and pull through, and I just pull that tight. And then with your feeder string, I'm just going to gently pull that tight around the joint. Push the knot down, and then just to seal it, make another loop and pull the end through. And then my next piece of string would actually go almost a double space down. And do the same, loop round, tight, tight, and cut your knot. Now what I'm doing here is, my goal is to move this muscle down to create an equal joint. So by doing the double space and then going back on myself, I'm just forming the muscle into an equal joint for roasting. Once you've filled in that space, you can just go the next one along, and you can carry that on all the way down the joint. That's our French trim rack, nicely tied, ready for roasting. What I'm also going to show you is how to cut cutlets, which now you've done all this is very, very easy. Just simply going to face off the front first, and from the middle loins, just take some nice cutlets for you. So not only do you have like a beautiful roasting joint, you have some cutlet chops ready for the pan. Obviously I wouldn't normally tie it to cut cutlets from it. I just wanted to show you as much as I can. So don't worry about these bits of string, you can just take them off. Let me clean these away, and next we're going to look at our pork T-bone chops. So here we have the other end of our loin of pork. Now I've got two cuts here. I've got the pork chump and I've got the T-bone. First thing I want to do is take off the pork chump. It's fairly simple to do. You feel this nice dip, and that's where the chump and the loin meet. Now with my steak knife, I'm just going to cut straight down through the meat, and then I want to saw the bone. And there you can see why we call it a T-bone. We've got a tenderloin there, a loin, and this nice bone that forms a T at the bottom. With our chump, we'll use that probably for sausage meat. You can use it for steaks and a roasting joint as well. Now with the loin, what we want to do, we want to cut nice inch thick chops out of that. So what I'm going to do is tenderloin down, so I've got a firm grip on it. It's just cut through the loin first. Just until I hit that bone, at which point I would then use my saw. As soon as I've got through the bone, using my knife. That's going to leave me with a lovely T-bone chop. So I've got the best of both worlds there. You've got the tenderloin, the loin, and this beautiful fat along the back. So from that, we've got a beautiful French trim cutlet and a T-bone pork loin chop. If you'd like to see more butchery demonstrations, please click the link.